All right. Well, we're live again. I'm still learning how to do this. You know what? Probably 300, 400 episodes in, I will finally get this. I will finally understand how technology works. So, welcome to Dad University. It is Tuesday. That's when we do this. We switched the time a little bit. We all kinds of logistics behind this, but basically 4 p.m. Pacific time. 7 p.m. Eastern. I wish I knew other time zones, but I don't. Hello, Matt. Good to see you. If you're joining us and coming into the chat, say hello. We've got, let's see, what do we have here? We have YouTube. We have Twitter. We have LinkedIn. Is that all working? And then we are also on Instagram now, but we're doing Instagram a little differently. If you guys have if anyone out there in internet world has understanding of how to get Instagram on a desktop streaming, let us know.
Be here soon. Our first baby boy is due May 10. Hopefully I do a good job. Been
right on.
A lot of your videos over the past few months.
So here's the thing with Instagram, which we appreciate people coming on Instagram, is that it's not integrated into our software. So Luke is nice enough to rattle off any comments that I might be able to get to. But if you have something that you want to ask, YouTube is probably the easiest. That's where most of our stuff happens, but you can do it on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. It's just Instagram. We're trying to get that integrated, and so far we haven't. But that's not information that anybody really cares about. So again, if you want to support the show, really appreciate it. We've got cameras actually, sound, and creating all these courses and videos and doing all this stuff. It's a lot. It is a lot of work. And the best way that you could support us is by becoming a member, because you also then get benefits. You get access to all of our courses. We have 9 courses right now. You have access to all the videos, well organized and tagged based on subject matter and other things, ages, and then also discussion groups. And so you can get into discussion groups with other dads who want to practice this, this kind of stuff. So appreciate it. If you've got a question, throw it in the chat. I'm happy to ask that or answer. I'm happy to ask. Happy to answer any questions. And I think we have a question though, don't we? We grabbed one there were some YouTube questions that came up. So we'll try to get to those. We asked people also beforehand, send us in your questions. So Eric writes, need help with this witching hour. My little guy just turned a month old. Around 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. he cries and screams. Can you help? So very common. And, here's the one thing with children or babies is that there is only so many reasons why the child is crying, typically. And that means, and oftentimes, let's say if it's at this time, the child is really tired. The child is really hungry. The child wants some attention or soothing. Something is going on with the child. Child could have gas, could be uncomfortable. So, what you do is you go through these 3, 4, 5 things first, and maybe they're hungry. You make sure that those are all satisfied. And, oftentimes, this is something that, people have dealt with for so long. that, you feel like you've done all of those things. Baby's dry, there's nothing there. You just fed the baby, you're holding the baby. And then so some babies just prefer some kind of stimulation. And like for our child, we had a little like rocker, a little swing that you put my son in there and he's out. And so, you got to kind of find what works for your child and understand the pattern. So first I'd say check of all those things. The other could be that your timing, let's say the baby's tired, your timing could be off. It could be putting the baby to sleep earlier, or make sure that the child's getting a nap during the day. Or it could be that the child doesn't need a nap and the child's not tired. So every single child is different. There are these unique things that I would say that, you try to eliminate what could be going on, but ultimately you got to check those things. If none of that's working, I would say look at a swing of some kind. I remember, people had said like they took the baby in a car ride, which that's a lot of work. But take the baby for a walk, just holding the baby and swinging. There is actually also too a video on YouTube, and I think it's for a newborn, and I don't know the doctor's name, but look up stop baby from crying. Sorry. And there is a doctor that does like the reverse football hold and literally stops babies from crying all the time. And he's proven this method over and over and over again. So that's another one that you could try. And hopefully that helps. Matt asks, I grew up in a family of boys and have a 3-month-old daughter, which is great. But any key tips for raising a girl? Yeah, I have a couple videos about raising daughters or raising a girl. First one, and probably the most important because it is, it's probably the major difference of raising a boy versus a girl in the first early years, is you simply make sure that you are wiping the child correctly. That's really the difference. You make sure that you are wiping from the front to the back. You don't want any sort of bacteria or anything going in. So literally, that's probably the major difference. Now, you will have people that really like to treat their children differently. Let's say a boy versus a girl. We have a tendency as dads to treat them differently. We are typically more verbal and gentle with our daughters than we are with our sons. I actually made it, because I studied this and learned a lot by the time my daughter was born, is that I made a great effort not to be any different. So my daughter played with the same kind of toys. We introduced the same kinds of things and allowed her to make those decisions. And so, we used to call my daughter Dirt Girl because she played in the dirt. She would be wearing like a dress and would just love playing in the dirt. Well, a lot of people were thinking that like that's a boy thing, but she loved to play in the dirt. Playing with cars or, toy soldiers, whatever. It didn't really matter, and especially when they are very, very young. Now, they become socialized, obviously, and, the world may treat them a little bit differently. But as a parent, until they get a little older, there might not be, I didn't see too much of a difference. And we made great efforts to do that. We just giving them both choices. If my son wanted to play with something that was considered a girl toy, I didn't care. It's not gonna negatively impact him or change him in some way or whatever. It was, children like what they like and they don't like what they don't like. So, they grew up fine, healthy children. So, yeah, I think as far as raising a girl, that would be the only tip I think I would recommend. Now, as they get older and the universe, descends upon them and they're in school and they are treated differently by others, then there might be different advice. There might be different things of, how to deal with it. But I'm also noticing now, where I have a son that's 14 and a daughter who's 12, I can't have a double standard where I'm telling my son to do something in a certain way, but don't tell my daughter to do that. From anything, whether it is, dating to, respect or dealing with other people or friends or whatever. So yeah, it's interesting. There are definitely differences that are going to come into this world of people and the way that they treat them, and your family and friends are going to treat them a little differently. And that's kind of, I think there's not much to avoid there, but I treated them kind of the same. I'd like to think that there's probably more. Here's what I will say. There's probably more of a difference between how a first child and a second child is dealt with and how you deal with them than whether it's a boy or a girl, and especially in the early years. A second child, you are a little bit more lax. Let's say, and your one child is 4 and the other one's 2, or the other one's 1. Your younger child gets exposed to different things in different times and learns from the older child. So to me, there's more differences in that and how my children were seeing the world based on their experiences versus just being boy or girl. But that's me. Justin, firstborn is due May 10th in just about 8 weeks. Can you name a few big tips for me to expect on the dad's side, mainly through the first couple of weeks of being home, baby boy? So Justin, I have a video which outlines this called, what happens when you bring the baby home. But yes, I can highlight a couple of things. First is be okay with not knowing what the heck you're doing. This is your first child. You bring the baby home. I recall I tell a story of my wife and I looking at our child. We brought him home in the car seat. We put him on the bed, and we looked at each other and was like, now what do we do? We got him home. Now what are we supposed to do? So a couple of tips. Make sure your spouse, I'll make the assumption you're married, I don't know, or your partner, make sure that you have empathy for her just like you did in the pregnancy. So in other words, if she's breastfeeding, she might be really tired, just like pregnancy. She might be really overwhelmed. If she's staying home and taking care of the child the majority of the time, or whatever the relation, whatever that time, the roles are, you both should have empathy for the other one. Same way, if you're going to work, she understands that you're away from the baby, and that can be difficult. So it's like talking to each other about, and communication is very important, talking to each other about the empathy and how to look at it from the other person's perspective. That's going to be helpful. Another one is get on a schedule. So assume or make some kind of schedule that works for both of you and the child, and understand that the schedule might not work. In other words, the baby might not go to your schedule. We used to have a t-shirt that said, party up in my crib at 3 a.m. Our child decides to get up, and that's all you can do. Make a schedule. Also, the roles and responsibilities that you each have. So who's getting up at what time, who's feeding, who's cleaning, who's working, who's doing errands, who's doing laundry, whatever that is. It's really helpful to write that out and have a schedule so that you both have expectations and that are very clear about who's doing what and when. And then there's not really an argument. And it's not like you can't help each other or whatever, but those roles and responsibilities can get a little overwhelming. And I remember it's like who's supposed to get up today, because you're exhausted. Who's doing this, who's doing what. That's another tip. And then another one maybe would be family and friends. Don't feel like you have to make accommodations for everybody else. It's your child. And so, babies are a great excuse not to do stuff. So, you don't want to go to this family function, you don't want to go to this party, you don't want to go, you can totally, blame it on the child. Sometimes that's cool. You can only do that for so long. But also of family and friends, of knowing if things are overwhelming or you're not feeling like it, it's okay. And people who have kids will totally understand that, or should understand that. Sometimes family members might not, but know that, you can put up boundaries and say, you know what, I'd like to wait 2 weeks, or, if in-laws or your parents or what, everyone's kind of clamoring at the baby. That's one. At the same time, total, other side is if family is willing to watch the baby, give yourselves a break. If you have a parent, grandparent, whatever, somebody who's willing to watch the child for a short amount of time and you're okay with that, let them. It's okay to take breaks. Sometimes just if you can get some sleep, that could be beneficial. So hopefully that helps. Sorry, questions coming in here. 19-month-old loves to hit, kick, headbutt, be violent. Timeout is a joke. Trying gentle parenting suggestions. Well, gentle parenting is good, I guess, in that sense. But I would show the child what to do. And I'm not necessarily saying that you're not. But show the child what to do. In other words, if they're hitting or something, you can grab their hand, firmly. You say no. And then you lightly you say soft, nice, soft, nice, whatever. Same thing with his head. Is it he? I didn't know. I'm just assuming it's a boy. Most of the time, boys are the ones who are doing that. If he headbutts, whatever, you can grab his head and instead rub soft. Put your face soft to his face, and just say soft, nice. Love, or whatever words you want to use. People use different words. So you show the child what to do. And, saying no is okay, but, a 19-month-old often is like not even quite there yet, that they don't really understand what's going on. And so showing them what is nice, showing them what is gentle is really going to do it. Talking to them, or the timeout, like you said, is a joke. Yeah, of course. Under 3 years old, like they rarely understand what punishment is or why. Like they're not, oh, you took that away from me or put me over there or whatever. Like they can't make the relation to that. Like they don't know that like, oh, I did this and therefore I got this consequence. Like they're not quite there yet. Think about it. Their brain has only been here for, a year or two. There's so much information that they're soaking up. And, it's a common thing for babies to hit, bite, scratch, whatever. It's like they don't really know often what it is that they're doing. And so they're understanding their bodies, they're understanding their responses, and that can continue sometimes, especially like if a child has emotions and they don't know how to express it. They're just learning of what an emotion might feel like or be, but they still don't know. They still don't know. So best thing you can do is show them the positive. Soft touch, soft heads, kisses, no, you say no and instead, soft and kiss. That's why I said the best, you can kind of do that. There's some great things with gentle parenting. And especially at that age, the timeouts and the penalties, the punishments and the stuff aren't going to work. I mean, I remember, and we always like kind of make fun of the situation. It was sort of before I took parenting classes, and my child was like 2, my son was, before I started this whole journey. And I put my son on the step, because I had seen it somewhere. And I was so mad. I'm yelling at him. He's like 2 years old. I put him on the step and like, you don't know what you know what you did. And, and he had no idea what he did. And he's crying. And I made him sit there for like a half hour. He didn't know what he was doing. It was just, and I look back at that, like I kind of have to laugh. I mean, it was mean at the time. I would never do that again because it doesn't work. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Brandon, my son is 20 months. He often throws a fit if it doesn't go his way. We redirect him to something else, but other times the behavior continues. Any tips? Yeah. So at 20 months, he's just getting there. I have a couple toddler videos of behavior. There's a couple things, if you're able to communicate with your child, let's say your child can understand some things, then part of it is understanding why he's throwing the fit. And you had said like, doesn't go the way he wants. So maybe you can give an example in there in the chat, or I'll just make an example and see if this fits. Child wants a cookie, and instead you're giving him a carrot, and the child wants a cookie. It's like, well, I'd want a cookie too. So first, like, you have to have some empathy and understand, like, I would understand like why the child wants a cookie. But you might even say something, say, I know you want a cookie. That's so frustrating. It's giving the child a little bit of empathy and affirming the fact that, yeah, it does suck. Like, I would want a cookie too. And I understand that that's not, that's not great. That's not fun. So you're like affirming the child's feelings and understanding, rather than like, no, you can't have the cookie. You just had a cookie. You're never going to have a cookie. I mean, like, what does that do? Either way, the child's not getting the cookie. You might as well affirm their feelings and understand, like, yeah, it does suck that you can't have a cookie. I get it. I understand. So that's one thing. I think the other is getting down to his level, and the whole thing of like fits and tantrums and all this is getting ahead of it, and understanding prior to it happening why it's happening. So you can do that by, getting down to the child's level sometimes, giving them a hug and say, yeah, I know you've got some feelings right now and you're feeling this, and I'm sorry, I'm here for you. Something like that. Sometimes they just want the attention. Sometimes they just want to cry it out. But, a fit, a tantrum, not getting what he wants, all of those things, totally understandable. Like, think about it, even as an adult, we do the same things. So I think part of it too, as training parents, is like, we have to see it differently. We have to see that this child is trying to communicate. And what maybe your son is communicating is like, I don't like this. Makes sense. So you can agree with him and say, I understand. That's what you want. Or like, say you are somewhere and you need to leave. Like you are at the park and you need to leave and your son doesn't want to leave. Well, there's techniques of dealing with that. It's, preparing him and saying, hey, when the clock gets here, we're going to leave. Or, hey, you got 20 more minutes, you have 10 more minutes, you got 5 more minutes, you have 3 more minutes, you have 1 more minute, like, doing that kind of stuff. Or, hey, we're going to leave the park. Do you want to run to the car or walk to the car? Like giving the child choices. That's another thing. Children often, it doesn't go the way he wants. Give him 2 choices and he gets to choose. And either one of those choices are okay with you, but then he gets to choose. And at 20 months, it's a little early, but as a toddler, they want to start like asserting a little bit of control. They don't really understand. And so like, they don't really understand what's going on in their world. And so part of that is kind of asserting a little bit of control or dominance and stuff. I mean, they don't really know what they're doing, but that's what they do. So you can give them choices, Do you want the carrots or the celery? Either way, you're having a vegetable, Do you want to put on the red jacket or the blue jacket? Versus you just saying, hey, put on your jacket. You say, hey, we're going to put our jacket on. Do you want a blue jacket or a red jacket? And like oftentimes then the kid gets to choose. They feel like they're in control. That is sometimes part of it. It's like they're asserting this control, that let them have that control. They get to choose. And if the kid's really smart and they have a third option and like don't like that option and they get a third one, well, you just say, no, these are the options, and you guide them in that way. Remember, you're the adult, they're the child, but you still need to be understanding and empathetic. All right, Island Breeze. Oh, guys, again, if you have a question, throw it in the chat. You were just answering questions here, going down like, I don't even know what that's called, where you just hit question after question. If you want to support the channel, totally appreciated. Go to daduniversity.com/support. You can become a member, which is the best way, because then you get access to all the courses and videos and everything else. Or you can make a one-time donation, and that is very appreciated too. We've gotten some donations recently, very, very appreciated. But, become a member. You get access to everything. Videos, courses on discipline, become a fatherhood mindset, mistakes we make as fathers, Even there's some relationship stuff in there. There's all kinds of beneficial things for you in the courses. Okay, Island Breeze, what's the best way to instill a father's values in a child in a divorce household situation for a 6-year-old? Well, I'm making an assumption here, and I don't know if this is the case, but are your values different than your ex's? Then obviously that's an important thing. If that's what I'm hearing or sounding. I can recommend a book that's really, really good. This is more of the dynamic between you two, which I don't have any context here, but it's a really good book. God, the name I always shoot. What is it called? Well, shoot. I will post it as in the notes. So I apologize, I can't. It's the book by Gwyneth Paltrow, made fairly famous.
It's all good.
Conscious uncoupling. I got it. Conscious uncoupling. And the purpose of that is, making your relationship really strong with the person who you are no longer with, but also, the way that in dealing with a child. And, the way that you instill the values in your child is when they are with you, assuming that they're with you, let's say half the time or a certain amount of the time, is that you make sure that that's the case. I don't know that there's any secret. I mean, especially if you have different values or different important things than your spouse or your ex, the best I can do there is to say, have the best relationship you can with your ex. That's the best way to get what you think across. Because you both agreeing on things just makes it easier. And, in that kind of situation, you want to respect the other. You want them to respect you. And so, yeah, I don't know that there's any shortcut to that other than just spending time with the child, talking to the child about it and, what is important to you, and, maybe having household rules and, being really loving. The best way is by example, and imagine that your child is watching, listening, and hears, sees, hears, and mimics everything that you do. And so how you treat mom, the child's mom, is really important. And then how they see that, how the child witnesses that is crucial. They see dad as a loving, respectful, helpful, supportive person. They're more inclined to be that way. If dad is angry, bitter, upset, yells, whatever, that's hard to instill those values. And so, it's going to be an uphill battle when you have different values than what it is that you're displaying. You're saying, be respectful or be nice, and then you're yelling at, at somebody. So monkey see, monkey do. Just think of it that way. And at 6 years old, they are a sponge. They're watching and hearing everything you do, from you talking to a waiter at a restaurant to the way that you're on the phone with somebody. They listen, they hear it, and they are mimicking what you do. And if you don't believe me, just watch your child's behavior. If they slam a door or they yell something, well, where do you think they saw that? That's from us adults and them mimicking it. And so the best way that you can avoid any sort of negativity is by just not showing it yourself, especially when you're around your child. You want to talk to your buddies, or you're in private, whatever, but around your child, a lot of people think that they need to be honest, and which that's great, but I think then you also have to look at it as what is, and I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but it's an important topic because I see this all the time, that people are not leading by example. That's actually another course that we have. In the membership, we have another course called Leading by Example, and it talks just about this. It's, it's respect, gratitude. It's all these things that you instill these values in your child and the ways to do it. So I'd suggest becoming a member. You can become a member for $3 a month. It's like, come on, it's a cup of coffee. And go through the Lead by Example course. And that's a good way to do it. Justin asks, what are your thoughts on a pacifier for a breastfed baby? I'm hearing mixed things and not sure if it's better one way or another. I'll be honest. Neither of my children took to pacifiers. Neither of them cared. We even tried. I didn't have an opinion either way. I think it's an individual thing. I think sometimes it can be difficult to get them off the pacifier, but we had, when my son was crying and upset, we were just like, what else could we do? We were grabbing at things, and a pacifier was just something we tried, and he didn't care. He just spit it out. He didn't want it. So I think that's an individual thing. I don't know that I have a quote expert or professional opinion on it. I think it's something that if it works for you, like a lot of things in parenting, then they can be okay. I'd also learn the proper uses of pacifiers. I'd study that and the times to use it, how to wean off of it. Those kinds of things are going to be important too, because like anything, it can be probably abused or used too much, and as a result, there's some sort of negative about it. So, but yeah, thanks. These are good, all good questions. If you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. We are on YouTube. Oh, Facebook. I forgot to say Facebook in the beginning. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and we also have Instagram streaming on a separate device, but that's cool. Grant, question. My wife is due in 5 weeks' time, and our first child after a 10-year pregnancy journey. Wow. This past week, we have both come down with COVID from someone at my wife's baby shower. How worried for the baby should we be? Wow. Well, I am sorry that you have to deal with this. That is a lot. I think, well, here's the first thing I will say is I am not a doctor. I'm not an expert at, COVID and understanding the ramifications of having that and how it might affect a baby or you during the pregnancy. But here's what I will say about being worried, because that's the part probably that I could touch on. You asked, how worried for the baby should we be? I would remove your worry. There is no value in worry. Call it anxiety, worry, whatever you want to do. There is very little to no value in worrying about things. And take this from someone who is who was more of an expert worrier. Not a warrior, worrier. I wish I was an expert warrior. An expert worrier, and I'm still recovering from that, from being a worrier and anxieties and that kind of thing. I work on it all the time, meditate, exercise, eat well, try to get enough sleep, do lots of things to try to reduce that. Worry just isn't good for you. It's not good for her. It's not good for the baby. It's not good for anybody. So my suggestion in that case is do not be worried. Easier said than done, probably. But, until there is definitive information, meaning like you are sick or the baby, something happens, there's no reason to worry. And it's interesting. My mother dealt with cancer for 20 years. She passed away, but she dealt with cancer for many, many years, and she was a worrier. And her doctor said something once that had stuck with me. She was asking him all these scenarios, and he said, I don't play the what if game. And that stuck with me pretty hard, meaning, because she would ask, well, what if this happens? And what if I get this? And what if I do this? And he replied back and said, as a doctor, I don't play the what if game. I deal with reality of what we're facing right now. So that's great advice, I think, that was given to me. Pass that on to you. Don't play the what if game. What can happen if she has COVID? What can happen if the baby's... What if... Don't. Deal with the current situation. You have COVID, she has COVID, get healthy. That's it. Until you know anything else, don't worry about it. Like I said, I know it's easier said than done, but I think that we can take that advice on a lot of things. You're worried about a test. You're worried about, something in the future. It's okay to think about a scenario or what my scenario might be, but worry really doesn't provide us value unless it's getting you ready for something. You're building yourself up and you're getting excited, or you're preparing yourself in some way. I just don't see a lot of value from it. Let's see. Sorry, I'm reading. Brandon said, I've read that keeping your baby regular improves their mood. Of course, constipation is not a fun one. Fussing and whining, they could be, it could be gas, it could be constipation, etc. Giving them fiber, it's good to, make sure your doctor agrees with that. That's certainly a thing. Oh, okay. Jenny asks, do you let your kids use electronics? And if so, for how long and how often? This was taught to me, or this was kind of given to me by my mentor. When your children are functioning really well, and let's just say for the purposes of what that means, your children are, let's say, doing well in school, your children are playing nice, your children are, they have friends, they're being social, they're being respectful towards you, when those situations are all sort of in check, then I think that there's less policing about the electronics, or a little bit less policing about it. I do think that it's an individual decision. There has been studies that do say that, children who are very young, and we're talking under 5. So your baby should not be on electronics. That's just, there's no reason for that, to entertain them. There's no reason for that. Once they start, we watched TV when we were young. And so, playing a computer can be somewhat better than watching TV because it's interactive or educational. But my philosophy, I think it's sort of age dependent. I think there are some outlines by the American Association of Pediatrics, or one of the national organizations, of 30 minutes at most for children. But meanwhile, if your child is in school, that's all they do. They're on electronics constantly. So I can tell you electronics are, if your child is avoiding being social, this was something we dealt with, let's say neighborhood kids would come to the door and they want to play outside, and our child would turn them down. They'd say, no, I'm playing a game. That can only happen so many times. It's maybe once, maybe twice, the third time or whatever, no, you're going outside. And we would actually police that. So I think every family is different as far as their comfort. There are some dads and moms, mostly probably dads, who are gamers, and so for them, playing a game with a child is a fun thing and they love doing that. That's up to them. My 12-year-old does not have a phone yet. We established that at 13 our children would get a phone, and that's hard. That is hard nowadays to do that. And there's been lots of discussions, some unhappiness, but we have felt that was an important thing to delay that as much as possible. I think if you're using electronics to soothe, that can be difficult. So I think the amount of electronics you use should be looked at as how is it being used? Is it used for entertainment? Is it being used for education? Or is it being used to soothe? If you don't want to deal with your child and so you sit them in front of the TV, that's an individual decision that I might say not as the best decision, but hey, everybody kind of understands that to a certain extent. You need to get something done, and you need 30 minutes, and the best way to do that is to have the child be entertained, what are you going to do? Somebody else can't judge you for that. But it's definitely not the best thing. There are better ways of doing things, but it's the same thing as eating bad food. It's like you can eat bad food every once in a while. You just don't want to eat it every day and have it be, horrible or too much. JC, good to see you. You're welcome. Glad you're enjoying this. Ali says, my girlfriend and I just got pregnant and I'm freaking out. I can understand that. I'm sorry. My parents are very religious. Should I tell them or no? Well, what would happen if you don't tell them? I mean, let's go down that scenario. You don't tell them, and then all of a sudden you have some secret love, your secret child that they're not aware of. That's not going to be good either. So the reason, most people don't want to tell their parents is because their parents, they don't feel that their parents would be supportive of it. I mean, that's what I'm guessing. You're a young kid, it feels like it's a mistake, and your parents aren't going to be supportive of it. That's reality. And, I don't know the best way to say this, but you're doing adult things. You are having sex and you got pregnant. Those are mature adult things to do. And so as a result, the consequences of that are you're pregnant and you got to face reality. And reality is that there's a baby on the way and your parents will need to know. And so I think you sit them down and you talk about it and you figure out a plan. And, they may not be happy, but it's the reality. And we don't like to see people in our lives that, call it whatever, disappointment. I don't like that word. But a parent, how a parent reacts is somewhat telling as well. Like, they think of it as they wanted something for you, or they wanted your life to go a certain way, and it's not going to, or it's going to change, or it's going to be modified a little bit. So I think you grow up pretty fast. You grow up pretty fast in these kinds of situations. And I think you do need to talk to your parents. You need to talk to them in a mature and loving way and saying, hey, here's the situation. This is what's happening. I would really appreciate your support in whatever way you can. Now, be prepared that your parents might not support you in that, but that's the reality that you may have to deal with. So you also have to be, an adult and deal with the fact that your parents might not support that. And if that's the case, that's their decision, their loss, the stuff they'll have to deal with. But that's reality. So yes, you do need to tell them. Renee, I think it's Renee. How do you deal with differences in how you and your spouse raise your kids? As an example, I hope my son will be interested in sports and I'll encourage it, but my wife actually hopes he has no interest in them. I had nothing but positive experiences as a kid growing up. In surprise, it gave me some discipline and established routines. In sports. So here's what I would do is I would have a talk with your spouse, and maybe you already have, about what is, like, let's say it's sports as an example, of what it is about sports that your spouse doesn't like. And, and you have your positives and do it in a loving way. I mean, you can't just like, well, why don't you like it? It's like, listen, you got to sandwich it. You got to say, listen, I understand that, you don't seem to, think that that's a great thing. Can you explain to me why that is and what is it about the sports or such that you don't like? And I think you have a conversation after that. I think depending on the answer, you have to go in a certain direction. And I'll give you an example. If your spouse says, I don't want our child to get hurt, that's valid. So are there sports that potentially the child could play in which there's a very low risk of getting hurt? Maybe that's one. Your spouse says, I don't think, I don't want to spend the time doing it. I don't like our child, the idea that our child's going to be every weekend doing this, doing that. My wife and I actually agreed with that one. So we found sports that didn't involve us going to tournaments and things on the weekends. My children are martial artists and my son climbs. And there's no, I mean, martial arts can do it on the weekends, but there's not really, it's not games on weekends and we have the whole family has to go away and whatever. We just didn't push that. Now, if our child wanted to do it, okay. So I do think that, you can kind of shape them, but I really think it matters. The reasons do matter because you might be able to overcome, if it's really important to you, you might be able to overcome those obstacles with some kind of compromise. If you're thinking, well, I want my child to play tackle football because I played tackle football and did it, then you might have a little bit more of an obstacle if she's like, well, I don't want our child playing that and getting hurt and whatever. So maybe there's flag football or maybe there's something else. And what you'll find too, this is going to be a hard one to swallow, but what you also have to realize too is that what you want for your child is great, but that may also not be what your child decides to do. So it is nice to expose them to different things, but you also have to realize that you have another half, which is your spouse. Their opinion is valid. You may not agree with it, but I do think that oftentimes you can compromise. There might be a different sport. Maybe being part of a team is really important, and that's what you got the value out of sports. Or like you said, it established routine, or there's other things that yeah, so Renee said the thing is that both of those are her arguments, injury and time. Yeah. So you find sports, I think that that's fair. I understand it. But maybe if sports is really that important, then you find other sports that you could, still get excited about and that your child has less risk and that don't take up a lot of time, And here's the thing. You don't know that your child's even going to enjoy it, but it's important to expose them to different things in the same way that, let's say your spouse was really into music and you just don't care. You never played an instrument. You never even music doesn't matter to you at all, playing music, but your spouse is so into music and they want to expose your child to piano and guitar and drums and all of these different music instruments and stuff. And you just don't care. Well, it's still important as a spouse to say, you know what, let's try it, let's see. And if the child is interested in it, then maybe, that'll be interesting. So I think, it's part of being married and being, is that compromise. I think you could probably come up with something that you both are okay with. And hopefully that works. If not, I don't know. Hey, Jose, good to see you back on. Jose in Oceanside. Good to see you again. Welcome back. Guys, if you are, let us know where you're from, like Jose just did. He's close by in Oceanside, North San Diego. Let us know where you're coming from. I always like to see where people are, where you're coming in and visiting and seeing us from all over the world. And then also, if you want to support the channel, go to daduniversity.com/support. And you can become a member. Literally as little as $3. We love more, but $3 a month. You get access to all of the courses that we have, all of the videos, chat discussions, everything for $3 a month. And you help us put these on. These lives, video cameras. Renee's from Denton, Texas, right on. I'll give you a shout out too. If you put your stuff in there, I'll give you a shout out if that helps. Probably won't, but if it does, it's cool. Any donations or becoming a member helps us. It's like, the scripting, editing, recording, all of these things take up so much time. And the more members we have, the more resources that we can push to this. And membership is really, really important because it shows not only your support for us, but it also shows your own commitment. By having that commitment, even if it's a small amount, you are saying, I'm committed to doing this. And I think that helps your mindset. It's why we like things on social media. We review stuff and we look at it and then we like it, because that helps our brain and it makes us feel like we are doing something. And that's kind of the first step in doing that. So only got a couple minutes here. Renee gave us a donation. Thank you, Renee. Appreciate that. See, that's stuff like that. Renee, that's awesome. We totally appreciate that. Can we get a congrats graphic up there? Is that, we do that? Let's see that come on the screen. Woohoo! There we go. Good work, Luke. Those graphics. It's really, really appreciated when people provide a donation or become a member. And I understand, Renee says you can't become a member. It's probably, whether it's time and effort and money and all that stuff. But, if you can, that's what I say. You have access to stuff. It'll be, it's really, really valuable for you, because you have access to material that you're not going to get anywhere else. And I can give you an example. The fatherhood mindset course that we have, I don't know of, I do a lot of research online and know many of other people who provide these kinds of things. And there's a lot of great people out there who provide parenting advice and tips and such. But not for dads. There's not very many for dads. But nobody has a course like this where it talks about the specific mindset required in order to be a great father. Most of the stuff out there, there's stuff about discipline, there's stuff about time, and there's even some work-life balance stuff, which we have another course like that, or we have a course on work-life balance. But I tell you, the fatherhood mindset, the leading by example, these kinds of courses, they're just not out there. And that's why I made them, is because I wanted them. I wanted to learn this stuff. And there was nothing else out there that supplied us as dads with this information. And so I had to create it. Nico Mo just joined. New father in September. This is literally the type of platform I'm looking for. Well, awesome. So we are doing these lives. To become a member, just go to daduniversity.com/support and you'll have the links there. The URL is on the screen and you can go there and become a member. And even, there are some things there that are going to be applicable right now, even if you are a soon-to-be dad or a new father. A lot of the information too is applicable. Well, there's a ton of videos that apply to you, but as far as the courses, when your child starts communicating with you and you have that interaction. And so for some, they like to get that information now, talk with their spouse about the types of parenting that they want to do and sort of plan ahead. That's great too. But then the other things about leading by example and like I said, the fatherhood mindset, the mistakes that we make, and there's some relationship stuff in there too. I have a whole course dedicated to improving your relationship after the baby's born and what that means. And some of that is from, I'll tell you, it's trial and error. And it's not an easy time. It's not an easy time after you've had the child. And so that relationship is really, really crucial in how you deal with that. The communication, the empathy, all of it. So with that, guys, I want to say this has been a wonderful chat. I appreciate every single one of you who has joined us. We've had quite a few people come on this. Thank you to Instagram for joining us this time. If you are on Instagram or joining us from Instagram, we don't have the ability to implement Instagram stream into our existing streams. In other words, we actually have a separate phone that is streaming from that. So as a result, I can't see the questions. So the questions that come in from Instagram, I can't see them. So if you do want to see them, come into YouTube. That's the best place. Also, too, if you aren't a current subscriber, there's no cost, no membership, no nothing. Just hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. That really helps us too with the algorithms. If you guys understand how YouTube works, every time you click that button or you click subscribe or you click like, it really actually helps us. So do that as well. So just wanted to say thank you to everybody. We will be here back next week, Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you're in a different time zone, you'll have to figure that one out. I'm not great with that. And thank you again, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Guys, I'm excited. We've got a diaper bag giveaway. This is the Kobe expandable diaper bag. Really sturdy, it's got a lot of pockets. It's a very cool bag. For the next 50 members who sign up for daduniversity.com, as a member, we will put you in the drawing to win this diaper bag. It's over $139. It's got all kinds of cool accessories with it. So make your way over to daduniversity.com and pay what feels good to become a member. So become a member and get the chance to win this bag. Go over to daduniversity.com, click on become a member, and you'll automatically be entered if you're one of the next 50 people to do that. When I found out we were going to have a baby, I was so excited. I was also full of anxiety and fear because I knew nothing about children or being a father. So I began learning. I took parenting classes, did research, got certifications, and most importantly, experienced mistakes that I learned from. And while there was a lot of information and communities for moms, there wasn't many resources for dads. And so I decided to take action and began building Dad University. Dad University is a one-of-a-kind educational platform for dads to help you achieve your full potential as a father. We help you go from overwhelmed and confused to calm and confident father with our courses, our videos, live broadcasts, support forum, and more. When you become a member, you get unlimited access to everything. The pricing for our monthly membership is pay what feels good. Education, the community, the tools that you will get here are priceless. But we also understand that everyone values them differently. And as such, we give you the choice of what you want to pay. How much is peace of mind worth to you? Click on Become a Member and get started today. When I found out we were